To start off the half drop repeat, I'm just going to use this clip art that I made in a Skillshare class. I'll leave the link below if you want to learn how to create these. If not, I will also leave a link so you can just download the clip art on my website if you want to use those to practice doing a half drop repeat. With your file open, with your icons or clip art, whatever you want to call them, go ahead and create a new document to create your pattern. So File and New. So when you are creating a new document, change the units to whatever you are most comfortable in. I am just going to use pixels because that is what I use on an everyday basis. But if you want to design in inches or centimeters, millimeters, you can go ahead and select that. And also, depending on the document type you selected, you may have noticed the DPI at 72. I always design in 300 DPI, even if it's something I know is just for the web, just because you never know when you may end up using this for another project. So it's best to go ahead and design in a higher DPI. And color format, once again, I am designing this. I have no other plans than to use it on my computer or online, so I'm going to stick with RGB. But if you know that you want to print this out, then use CMYK. So when you come to the dimensions of your document, when doing a half drop repeat, make sure that your height is something that is easily divided in two. So I'm going to use 1,000 pixels, and once again, when I am creating patterns, most of the time I'm doing 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. So that's what I'm comfortable in. And like I said, the height is easily divided into two. So with everything set up, click OK. And I'm going to start off with the rectangle tool, or M, on your keyboard. And I'm going to make a square that's the exact same size as the artboard. And you will know that you have the same size because you will see the circle in the corner along with the guidelines. And I want to change this color to more of like a kind of a creamy color or a beige, just because the clip art I'm using are leaves, so it'll have kind of that fall vibe to it. So with the Move tool, or V, on your keyboard, I'm just going to select everything on here. I'm going to hold Shift down and deselect the autumn clip art. Hit Command C on the keyboard to copy, or go to Edit and Copy. Go to your pattern document and either hit Command V to paste, or you can go to Edit and Paste. So once again, with your Move tool, I don't know if I actually want the owls, so I'm just going to move these to the side. I don't want the pumpkin, and I'm fine with the acorn, but I'm still going to move it off to the side. And I think I'm going to leave these the colors they are. If you happen to use these particular clip art, you can go in and you can change the colors if you would like. And if you want to step back and undo your last step, you can hit Command Z on your keyboard. And just a quick refresher on creating your standard tile repeat. If I move this leaf to the side of the document, whatever is coming off of the side of the artboard needs to be repeated on the opposite side. And that is also applicable to anything on the bottom or top. So anything that's hanging off the edge on the bottom or top needs to be repeated on the opposite side. So for that, with this being 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels, I would need to move this over by 1,000. And one thing to know, if you're on the right side of the artboard and you're moving it to the left, it's going to be negative. And then if you're moving something from the bottom to the top, it's also going to be negative. So I know a lot of people like to only work on the top and the right, so it's easier because it's positive numbers. I'm not trying to sound like super into math. This becomes second nature, so it is really easy once you do it a time or two. So getting back to the half drop repeat, with this leaf selected, I'm going to hit Command C and Command V to copy and paste it in that same exact location. And then if you come over to the right, drop down to the bottom, you will see your transform panel. Go into your X panel and hit plus 1,000. Hit enter and you'll see that it has now duplicated to the other side. So this is where having a file or having a document size that's easily divided into two. So 1,000 pixels divided by 2 is 500. So once you move your clip art or your motif, you need to drop this down by 500. So go into the Y panel and hit plus 500 and enter. So now you have successfully brought the leaf over by 1,000 and dropped it by 500. So you have already set up your half drop repeat. Now say you have something on the right side. I'm going to move this over so I can show this example. So Command C, Command V to copy and paste. I think you can also use Command J and it does the exact same thing. I am just used to using the Command C, Command V method. So if you go to the transform panel and you do plus 1,000 and say you put in the plus 500 for the Y, you will notice that it is now off of the artboard because it's not repeating where you would like it to. So I'm going to hit Command Z to step back. Once again, I'm going to go through this process, do plus 1,000, and then in your Y axis, this time you're going to do a negative. So do negative 500 or do minus 500. And now it is repeating in the appropriate spot. So I'm just going to bring this leaf down and enter in minus 1,000 and you will see that it is repeating at the top. So you can go ahead and start filling in some more spaces in your artboard. And one thing to think about when you are doing a half drop repeat, keep in mind where things are going to repeat. And this becomes more natural over time, but you see this leaf is going to be repeating right here, and this acorn is just above it. So it's going to be in this area. So you're going to have two acorns really close together if I placed it right there. So I'm going to think I'm just going to put one here, even though it's still kind of close. And then move this around. And then I'm going to scale it down by clicking in the corner and holding Shift. And I do not want the owls, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those. And I am always a fan of polka dots and patterns, so I'm just going to add in a couple. Okay, before you finish up with your pattern, make sure you look at everything to verify that it has been repeated on the opposite side. So both of these leaves have been repeated. This leaf has been repeated. There's a few times I've made patterns and I realize later on that I have forgotten to repeat an item. So it's always good to take a second and review it. So first, save your pattern as an Affinity Design file. And then I'm going to also export this. And you can export as JPEG or PNG. And just go ahead and export. So to test out your half drop repeat, you could stop right here and go to a website like Spoonflower, which actually I will do so you can see how to set it up on websites like Fashion Formula is another one that easily lets you upload half drop repeats. So either Spoonflower or Fashion Formula, and I've had really good luck with both. I actually think I like Fashion Formula a little bit more than Spoonflower. So once you are in Spoonflower, go ahead and go to Design and Upload. Choose the file that you just created. And upload. So the first thing you will notice when you upload a half drop repeat, it's going to be very obvious because it's going to show lines in it. So you can just select half drop and now you can see that the lines are gone. Make sure to save the layout once you have selected a half drop repeat. And just because we're on Spoonflower, if you haven't already used it, you can also see what your pattern would look like on wallpaper and gift wrap. So you can see the test swatch and fat quarter and the yard. And if you want a smaller version of this, because I saved in Affinity Designer, I saved it as JPEG high quality, I can actually decrease. It gives me that option because I had it at 300 dpi, so now it is decreased to 150 dpi, which will give me a smaller pattern, which is kind of nice when you design at a higher dpi, so you have that option of having a smaller pattern or a larger pattern once you upload it to sites like this. So heading back to Affinity Designer, if you know there is a certain size you would like a pattern to fit, say you want to do a wallpaper for your computer. It's a little more difficult, actually it's a lot more difficult in Affinity Designer than it is in Illustrator, because in Illustrator you can save this as a pattern swatch and then just create a rectangle the size that you need and you're done. I have read online that Affinity is working on pattern tools for Affinity Designer, so I really hope to see that soon. If they do, I would potentially completely go over to Affinity as opposed to working in Adobe products as well. But for now, we have the workaround of creating a document the size that you would like. So I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to change this back to pixels. Once again, if it is something that is just for a computer, like example, the wallpaper for your computer, design in RGB. If it's something that's going to be printed, say you're working on patterns to show at a trade show, CMYK. And in your dimensions, select the size that you want for the purposes you're using. For me, if I'm making this for my computer to use as a wallpaper, I know I need 2560 pixels by 1440 pixels. Go to File and Place. Select your pattern JPEG and place it in your document. So when you place your pattern, you already know the size that you've used. So this is still 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. If you want to decrease the size so it's not as large, in the transform panel, you can go in and change your width and height and still make sure that it is easily divided in two. For this to just start out with, I'm going to continue with 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels. I may end up decreasing it, but for now I'm going to start with 1000 by 1000. So with your pattern selected, copy and paste by using Command C, Command V, or Command J. And then I'm going to do plus 1000 in the X panel, and then plus 500 in the Y. Zoom out using the minus sign. And if it is being a little weird and showing a line, you can always move it over until that fragment line is gone. Okay. So at this point, it's really easier to just select each tile or select the tiles and duplicate them. So line them up. And you will know they're lined up because you will see the guidelines on. And just because it's easier, I'm only going to select these two. So it does take a little bit of playing around with it to get it perfect. Okay, so you can see, I'm going to zoom in, you can see the faint line of the artboard. And it is good to zoom in so make sure that you don't see any fragment lines like you do here. So I'm going to move that down. And I think everything else looks good. Another tip, if you want to look around your artboard with your Move tool selected, you can also hit the space bar. You can hit the space bar and it will allow you to move around your document. Okay, so zooming back out, Command and the minus sign. Going to select everything, and this is where if you want to decrease the size or the scale of the pattern, with everything selected, use your arrow key by clicking in the corner, and you can increase or decrease the size. Go ahead and save it. For this, I'm going to export. and it's the size that I would like, and I want JPEG with the high quality, and save, and you are done. Okay, so after you save it, want to take a good look at it before you X out of your document. So going into your file, open it, and everything looks good. So if everything looks good, you are done. Those are the only two ways of really getting a good pattern out of Affinity Designer. Go ahead and design your tile, upload it to websites where you want to sell them, or tile them in a document of the size that you know that you need. Hopefully soon we will see a pattern tool in Affinity Designer. Please make sure to hit subscribe, and if there's anything you would like to learn, please let me know. Thanks, guys.